Hello everyone and welcome to my YouTube channel. Thank you for subscribing and all your positive comments. I really appreciate it. I have been wanting to produce more videos over the past several months, but my GoPro audio has been failing. That's another story. As promised, one of the things that I would like to talk about is my Checkride. I will not be sharing DPE secrets, but rather tell you how I prepared, what worked, what didn't work, what mistakes I made, and maybe what you can expect. As you may know, you can't record your Checkride, so I have prepared 5 tips that worked for me. Now realize that all examiners are different, so please consult with your instructor for your own unique situation, and keep in mind the ACS is the guideline for your Checkride. I had an awesome examiner. He made me feel very comfortable from the start. So after 2.5 years of flying and studying, that was important to me. This video is about the oral exam, and I have plans to talk about the flying portion in the next video. If you had anything that you did or are doing to make your Checkride a success, I would love to hear it in the comments section below. At the time of this video, we are experiencing a crisis in our world with COVID-19, and I wish you all health and safety as we go through this together. And even Snoopy has his mask. I found him in the Marathon Airport, and I always wanted to have a Snoopy doll. Yeah, he was my mentor. It's cute. Right, Snoop? So on my Checkride, the first thing I did was arrive at 6:30 in the morning and get set up before the DPE got there so that I could have everything organized. So when the DPE arrived, he made me feel very comfortable, and that took a lot of my stress away. The first thing we did was sit down and go over all the paperwork to make sure everything was correct. Tip number 1 is to check your IACRA and your medical to make sure everything is correct. One mistake I made was using autofill in Google Chrome. When I did that, it didn't add my middle name to the middle name form field. And my middle name is on my driver's license, so your medical and your driver's license have to match up. This wasn't a big deal as I caught it months before my Checkride. The night before my Checkride, the DPE called, and he said, "Look, we have a problem with your IACRA. You don't exist. Nothing is signed. An instructor didn't sign off for you. So we can't move forward with this Checkride." Now imagine this. I was all geared up, all prepared, ready to go, psyched out, and you get a phone call like this. I knew it couldn't be true because I had my student pilot's license, so I had to find out what was going on. So what happened was, when I first started taking lessons, I signed into IACRA and thought I was a big girl and was going to fill it out myself. Well, I never completed it. A little while later, I sat down with an instructor and created another number, completed the application and had it signed off, and was ready to go and got my student pilot's certificate. So I actually had 2 accounts, for lack of a better word, in IACRA, one which was abandoned and the other one which was the correct one. But when the DPE called, I pulled out my folder, I found a sticky note, and I gave him the information that was on the sticky note, which was the old account. So I should have thrown the old sticky note away so I didn't accidentally use it 2 years later. Tip number 2, create a playbook. One of the reasons I made a playbook was to reference something quickly before the Checkride so I could refresh my memory. The front of the book was also for items that I knew the examiner would need and I could reference easily. In addition to my original documents, I had extra copies of the important items like my medical, driver's license, passport, and student pilot's license. I set up my book with tabs, and I would suggest to print out nicer looking labels than my scribble you see here. Just looks more organized and neater. These were the tabs I felt important and probably the areas where I needed a little more encouragement. Your book could be set up any way that works for you, but this is what worked for me. A note about your knowledge test, though. Make sure you have the original with the raised seal and not just a copy. I also have my personal minimums contract, and yes, I was asked about my personal minimums during the oral portion. AOPA has one you can print out to use. This is not the one I used, but it is an example. I had originals of any certificate of completions and training certificates in case things weren't going well and I needed those extra bonus points. Even though I use ForeFlight for my logbook, I printed out all my entries and endorsements just in case. Always have a backup plan. One rumor I heard was that DPEs like to ask weather questions, and I can confirm that is true. So having these charts made me feel prepared and burned into my brain. For the POA JFM, I took photos of almost every page from my aircraft and printed them out. Even though for the Checkride you will have the original near you, this allowed me to become more familiar with it at home. I created a weight and balance formula chart that worked for me. Math is not my best subject. Your DPE will give you his weight the night before, and they may tell you plans changed and Cousin Mark is now coming along. So you may have to rework your weight and balance in front of them. And remember, on the oral exam, you need to have a regular calculator and not the calculator on your phone. You will be asked to put your phone away. I added a section for emergency procedures and those charts we love so much. One of the areas I wish I would have been more proficient in was the maintenance logs. I looked at them several times and thought I got to know it, but I would say I would really get to know them as there were deer in the headlight looks on a few questions he asked during the oral. Just don't look at them the night before, but become familiar and make it just as important as learning density altitude. Also included in my playbook were all my flight plans and blank navigation logs. They were good to refer back to when I was studying, so I kept all of them. I went over my flight plan with a DPE and explained all my wonderful 5 hours of math that I did for a 1-hour trip. One other section was for the systems of the aircraft or related info. One other very important focus on my exam was airspace. Know your charts, not just your area, but other areas as well. Know offshore, ADIS, warning areas, military operating zones, restricted areas, and white information sections on the charts. Remember, the oral exam is scenario-based, so it's not just about learning cloud clearances in Class D. You may get a scenario question rather than just a rote memory question. This tripped me up a little bit because I was used to just studying, knowing the facts. But when somebody asks you a question about the airspace and wraps a scenario around it, you have to think a little bit more. So have your friends or study partners ask you a scenario-based question rather than just learning upside-down wedding cakes. The day before the Checkride, do anything you can to prepare. Make yourself comfortable with a good feeling like you are ready to go. This will relieve some stress so you can get a good night's sleep. I went to the hangar the night before to make sure the airplane had full fuel and everything was in place. This allowed me to relax and make me feel like I was ready for takeoff. You don't want to show up the morning of the Checkride and notice a light not working or stress waiting for the fuel truck. I actually sat in the airplane and went over emergency procedures, pretend questions, my cross-country route, and more. For example, I always knew what the stall strip function was on the aircraft, but I studied it a little more, and as you would know it, he happened to ask me how the stall strip works. My examiner did watch and ask me questions as I did my pre-flight, so I am happy that I did a pretend pre-flight and talked to myself about all the parts of the airplane the night before. I know DPAs are looking for the use of the checklist, so make sure you use it on your pre-flight. And it helps to blow off steam the night before with some exercise or really bad handstands. Tip number 4, bring enough food. Another mistake I made was not bringing enough food. I do not get very hungry when I fly, so I thought a protein bar would be enough. It so happened that as we were finishing the oral portion, a typical Florida storm popped up. So the examiner said, "Oh, while we wait it out, let's go over a few more things." After an hour or so, the storm cleared up, and he gave me the option of coming back or going for my flight portion of the Checkride. By this time, it was 2 p.m. I had an extra long oral test, did not eat, and I should have taken a longer break. He did offer a break, but I just wanted to continue and get it over with. I felt my protein bar was not enough to sustain my energy level for flying at this time. He did not mind coming back to do the flight portion on another day, so we looked at the forecast and decided to do it the following Saturday. This was extra special for me because my flight school was having a pre-scheduled barbecue party. So when I returned from the test flight, I came back to a celebration with most of my friends, family, sports cars, jets, and Cirrus aircraft on display. Tip number 5, get to know your FAR aim. Really understand your FAR aim manual. I took the time to study it and tab it how I thought it would benefit me. But when I did not know an answer to a question the DPE asked, I said, "Let me look that up for you." And then I fumbled. I went to the back, to the front, to my tabs, but had a difficult time finding what I needed for my answer. Eventually I found it, but that situation just caused me extra distraction and lack of confidence. So don't just tab your FAR aim. Have a friend ask you a question and be able to know where to look it up. Get familiar with the index and all portions of the manual that can help you refer to a subject quickly. So those are my 5 tips and takeaways from my oral exam. After the flight portion, we sat down to discuss everything we went over and if I was a pass or disapproval. And if you have not watched my video on how I got started flying, and this guy, then you need to watch it because this happened.